Is it on? Yeah. I did everything as requested.
Yeah, meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, so welcome to another Food Talk. This is the 28th Food Talk. We're approaching number 13. I keep saying that we will have a celebration on the 13th. I hope we do, because we deserve, it's 30 sessions of talking, sharing ideas, and acting on those ideas, or designing new projects from those ideas, and coming to see our other projects. So today we have two guests. So this is an innovation by itself, because usually we only have one. So we have, well, ladies first, I'm sorry, Jashan. So it's Nicole. So Nicole Vindel, right? She's one of our guests today. And the other guest is Jashan. Sippy? Yes. All right, very good. So welcome to sunny Lisbon, a bit warm Lisbon. And I'm going to, although as you all know here, you can check kind of the bio note on Food Talks, the item Food Talks from our master's degree on food design. I'm just going to, introduce Nicole and Jashan. About Nicole, she's a Barcelona-based artist, and she's now in Barcelona. And she's a designer specialized in food. So she was born in Guatemala, and she has been living between Tel Aviv and Barcelona, which is quite an adventure itself. So she's a close to nomad lifestyle, which she has this lifestyle that allowed her to open the possibility to alternative as topic futures of food, smart tableware, and the rituals of today's food culture. She's the co-founder of an art collective, Random Happiness, which uses happiness as a revolutionary tool. We can see you are a happy person yourself, but she has had the pleasure of collaborating with entities such as Food Cultura Foundation, El Celler, the Can Roca, we're very familiar with, and the Tate Exchange, also we treasure. About our other guest, I'm not going to say second guest, but our other guest, Jashan Sippy. He's a green building certified architect and co-founder of Sugar and Space, a creative food agency based between San Francisco and Mumbai, again, traveling. And he was the first to present it global scale. He was the first to present a completely edible architectural walkthrough for his thesis project, Gastronomy and Architecture. We're all very curious to learn more about that. Multisensory experiences. So this Jashan, he pursued a master in science in international business in the US and specialized in entrepreneurship. And he's certified by European Bartender School and Kiev International Culinary Academy. So again, very international, and has been the food and space correspondent for the Dutch Institute of Food and Design together. So these two guests today, Jashan and Nicole, they have co-founded Food Design Nation, a collaborative digital platform connecting global food creatives to design better futures for food. And this is the topic this year of this master, the food for the future. So we're all very excited to have you here. And so once again, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here with us. I don't know which one is going to start and to.
I'll begin.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Maria Ricardo, and to the whole team for having us. I am going to share my screen, so just let me know if you're able to see it.
It's happening. Yes. Thank you.
We're ready. So Nicole and I are very excited today to talk to you about Food Design Nation and to interact with your academic community. And we're going to focus on enabling collaboration for innovation. Nicole.
So first of all, we want to talk a bit about the context that we're living in. As creatives, I'm sure that you will find amazing ways of eating nowadays. But let's go one step further and think about what it implies. We are tired of seeing a lot of plastic bottles in the beach, of seeing masks now in the beach. And this is what we can tackle from a physical perspective, that it's very interesting, and actually it's such a kind of our identity. I think that in the next days, people will remember us as those crazy people using plastic for free for everything, right? And aside of plastics and the environmental impact of each of our decisions, something that we consider that it's relevant to talk about, it's about the digital impact of our data. So each interaction that we do has an impact on the physical world, and this is something we are quite aware of. And we can explain it through this example. I don't know if you're familiarized with one more here, with Vipul's collage. This is a composition of 5,000 days, the first 5,000 days of his artwork. And actually this artist made it to sell the first NFT, so crypto art, 1 week ago. I'm sure that you heard about that. If you're in Clubhouse or in stories of Instagram, you might have heard about the NFTs. That this is crazy because it's a big impact, a huge impact on history of art that have changed the way that we can buy and purchase and sell art that can be validated through a crypto, like a blockchain method. And what is interesting and actually more exciting for sure for the artist is that this art was sold for $69 million on Christie's last week. So this is amazing. This opens new doors for artists. But at the same time, we want to be critical, okay? The ecological impact of one NFT, so one artwork, it's equal to 1 month of an European resident's electricity consumption. And if we consider the whole amount of NFTs that we have nowadays in Spare, we can see that it's 2,000 years of some European residency electricity consumption. So we need to be very critical about where we're going, what are the actions that we are enabling in our future, and be critical with that. Something that is also very interesting nowadays is the way that we are interacting with each other, right? Not just with our artworks and our consumption, but also with each other. We are lacking this sense of touch. As Charles Spence is saying, we are touch hungry, right? And it's fascinating how we have invented a different language to communicate and to connect with each other, even if it's with a, elbow, with, like we can make like a dance to say hello now, something we weren't able to do before. And this is amazing, but we need to understand the implications in the food industry also, and how this is going to shape everything that it's going on. So another topic, I think that it froze, maybe just for me. Are we still in the greetings?
It's they stopped greeting. I think they gave up on the greeting.
Yeah, too much dance.
Too much dance.
So
yeah.
let's see if
maybe it's the connection.
Reconnect.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wait.
Very sorry about that. I'm back.
Okay.
Good.
Let's see.
Okay, I won't talk about greetings again, so it's not gonna stop again. Yes, good. This is another factor that actually it's not only about the pandemic and COVID, and it's not everything about that. But before we were already partially living online, and this is something that it's increasing. That every time that we are we are connected, but at the same time we can feel lonely in our connected environment, and lonely means that we can become more separated, isolated, So there's a need to do something. Actually, we are living in an era of the frictionless everything, the Uberization of things, right? We're talking about how we nowadays, we have the power behind our thumb, in just one click, we can connect with someone in the other side of the world, actually. And with one click, we can do amazing things happen in the physical life. So we wanted to work on this when we were envisioning the Food Design Nation. We wanted to understand first the needs and what's going on to create something that can fit in the requirements actually for the food design community in a broad spectrum. But for that, I think that it's nice to first get to know a bit about our vision of food design. We understand food design as something polemic. something that you may hate it, you may love it, but you cannot skip it, you cannot avoid it. You hear it and you want to know more, or at least it generates something in you and yourself. And actually, it's polemic because you can feel identified with the word of food design, or you can feel that it's something really feeling apart, something that you're not there. Actually, my mom still doesn't understand what it is, and I think that your moms are the same way. But it's, yeah, this is one of the facts that happens. But also, food design is horizontal, and it's something that with Jashan we were debating when we first met, because it's curious how other disciplines of design, let's say that you're a graphic designer, and you can narrow it down, and it's a vertical discipline. You can be a specialist on branding, and inside branding you can be specialist on creating stickers, and then in stickers you can be specialist of creating banana stickers, you know, and you can be the best banana stickers designer, you know, and then you're going like specializing and narrowing it down until you have something very concrete. But in food design, one day you're doing a workshop, the next day you're creating tableware, the next day you're creating furniture made out of seeds of something, then you're doing packaging out of mushrooms, and then you're, you know, like, and you're touching every single aspect of design that can be very broad. And actually, if you connect it with art, then it's like a boom, you know, and it's not a vertical discipline as we understand.
And finally, food design is, well, we believe it's actually all about people. So the reason both Nicole and I love to work with food as a material is because it is sort of one of the most intimate materials that you can work with, and therefore connect with either your viewers or spectators or guests or audience in general very deeply. So before we dive into Food Design Nation, both of us would love to tell you a little bit about our background and individual practices, and then how that sort of led to Food Design Nation. So I am the founder of Sugar and Space, which is a creative food agency based between Mumbai and San Francisco. At Sugar and Space, we really focus on pleasure and as well as multi-sensory experiences. We love working on projects which offer the opportunity for cross-disciplinary collaboration, because that means that we have plenty of opportunity to share knowledge, but also learn from other people. And most importantly, like we said, it's about forming meaningful connections, either between ideas or people and things, or people and people. So my background and journey started, unfortunately, Maria, we're not talking about the thesis project today. But we can talk about it
at the end.
we can talk about it at the end as well.
All right.
But I moved to San Francisco to work with an architect, and then worked at a startup called Candytopia, which was a made for Instagram pop-up art installation inspired by candy. So it was like Willy Wonka in real life, and you could walk through different rooms. I was in a management role. And there was plenty of photo opportunities, of course, dressed like a Oompa Loompa right over there. So after moving back to Mumbai, one of the first projects I worked on was designing a kitchen studio for a chef over here. And during that time, I met Natasha Gandhi, who is one of, well, now she's one of the top 5 in the recent season of MasterChef India, and all of us know MasterChef. But I'll tell you a little bit about the project and why Natasha is so important to it. So for the chef studio, we not only designed the entire kitchen as well as the dining area, but we also sort of provided this architectural installation, which we called the al dente wall. So it was a wall in which we upcycled 28,800 pieces of macaroni past the expiration date, which we all we handmade the entire wall and installed it, backlit it. And it sort of became the iconic representation or placemaker and conversation starter for this kitchen studio. The most interesting and I think fascinating part about it was it not only represented the chef's sort of food philosophy. She studied at the Cordon Bleu in London, and then also was one of the first people in Mumbai 3 years ago to start making handmade pasta. So adding pasta to her installation, but also upcycling food waste to create this installation was something that made sense. But the most interesting thing was because it was a material that was familiar, right? Everyone knows pasta and macaroni. It also encouraged guests when they came in to start interacting and touching with the wall, which normally if you use plain regular architectural materials, it's something that you don't start encouraging people to use touch, sound, taste, smell. We sort of just treat it as a very visual material, and at most we go and touch it. So this was something in which we were able to upcycle food waste and give it a new life, but also sort of act as a conversation starter. Through Natasha, I started working on some events, and there I met Ishita Shah, who is currently our creative chef. And together we create edible bites, which is effectively 3D printed food. So effectively what we love doing is to transform food waste. So let's say you had carrots that you juiced, right? Then you're left with the pulp, which you would ideally compost, but otherwise you tend to throw away. But what we do is we sort of process it, upload designs into our printer, and we create sort of edible bites, which is 3D printed food, which again transforms food waste into something that has a new or renewed life and sort of upcycle circular economy. So with this, we're able to sort of treat food waste as fine patisserie, and then we're able to sort of generate revenue and also deliver sort of artisanal and handmade food products that are 3D printed across the city. We work at a co-working space called Ministry of New, and that's where I met Vidisha. And most recently, she's a graphic designer. She's the lovely lady sitting in the back in that photograph. During the lockdown last year, a lot of our work was in person, immersive. It was sort of a challenge to execute regular experiences and events. So what we did was a series of online talks, for which the lovely lady sitting on the left is Dr. Isha Chainani. She's a gynecologist. And we went to college together before I became an architect. So I called her and I said, hey, you know, I think people are feeling a lot that they're stuck at home, they're locked down, they have food with them. There's a shift and focus on food and health. Is there something we can do in your practice? Does that sort of align? So we did a series of talks on how food can positively affect every stage of women's life. Which we finally ended up making into a publication along with Vidhi. So most recently we finished shooting for the entire publication, and hopefully we should be published by the end of next month. And the whole publication looks at how food can affect every stage of a woman's reproductive life. So eating or snacking your way from PMS to eating for PCOS, looking at fertility, pregnancy, feeding, as well as menopause. So it's something that really ties in food as medicine into the whole perspective of things. And finally, I also came across Christine Langstay's work on Instagram. And together we created a project called Nectar. So Christine she has a sustainable flower company. So she really talks about sourcing local flowers from local sources across India, and also educating customers and delivering, well, happiness in the form of bouquets across the city. I had started coming across a lot of Instagram posts with edible flowers on them. And it was not something 2 or 3 years ago that we had been used to eating a lot of, but it was something that was trending tremendously. So together we developed a project called Nectar, in which we wanted to sort of raise awareness of the importance of bees in the ecosystem. So really raise awareness about the declining pollinator population, for which we did a live performance dessert. So this was a 3D printed shortbread cookie. We did pressed edible flower cookies. We did a salted honeycomb, a whipped honey cream, upcycled rose petal jam, fresh edible flowers, and a whipped honey cream. And what really happened with this was we served this live across a table for people to consume. And for you to create any one bite the way we served it, you had to move your hand across the sort of table. And that was the analogy that we drew, which is exactly what bees do as their role in pollination. So that was just a way that we were able to use food as a medium to sort of raise awareness about an environmental issue, for example. And with that, we will head to Barcelona and the Jungle Studio with Nicole's work now.
Okay, so from the studio of Barcelona, currently based in Barcelona, actually it's a nomad studio. We have been traveling before when we were able to, and actually we're willing to come back. We have been traveling around, generating new narratives about food. And three things that defines us. One is the transdisciplinary approach. We're merging different disciplines, sometimes more attached to food, but sometimes more far away, as can be tattoo artists or I don't know, like randomness. And then the second value is how we try to apply critical thinking on everything we do. We try to be critical with ourselves and be the judges of our own ideas, but also about what's going on in our environment. And then the third one is a never-ending exploration of a cultural diversity that has been attached to all this moving around and traveling. And from our studio, because it's quite complex to already to define the food design, but we wanted to define the map where we're moving on. We're based on three main pillars, that is design, art, and food, and we play in the intersection of them. It can be through research, projects around research, exploration, some more experimental projects. Then practice-based projects that can be for like commissioned or from the studio. And then education, working with different institutions as Elisava, IED, LSA here in Barcelona, but also the University of Salzburg, HIT, and Tilburg University, and so on. Some topics that we like to talk about is like cultures, future, senses, interaction, experimentation. These are like the main ones. But I think that the magic happens everything in between, one on the other. So all the intersections are really interesting. And then satellite initiatives that I run from here, it's Random Happiness with a team where we use happiness as a revolutionary tool, not as a goal of we want to be happy, but as a way of thinking and making a icebreaker. And then Kiki Buba, a fermentation lab experimentation for experimentation. And then food designation, that is the one that we're gonna talk about today. You might think, okay, what's all of this? What's going on? You know, like it's so abstract. So let's put some examples and let's explain my story through the people that made it possible. I want to start first of all with the Rocca brothers. You already know them, so they don't need a presentation. But it was fascinating when I was studying in Elisava to make, I developed my pieces around advanced materials, such as thermoactive materials, active materials from different kinds, light alloys. And I was researching that with Materfat, that is the Center of Materials. And then I come up, why I saw all the possibilities that can happen with the application of these properties in hot cuisine. So I decided to knock their door and they opened it to me. So I was in stage there and developed a kit of different elements that were interacting with heat, with water, with the way that we perceive foods and the expectations that we have when we go to all of this, like a restaurant like this one, right? And in this case, this was like a bowl that was opening when pouring broth on it. And it's working for a broth of spring, as it's like floating in front of the guest. And then two persons that I have, I love a lot, and it's Nacho and Caro, very special for me. They are the founders of Plat Institute. And I'm gonna show you one of the many things that we've done. In this case, I was running the study abroad subject of food design, and I got the chance to make this workshop with students from many places in the world. Here I can see Taiwan, I can see Mexico, Chile, many places. So it was amazing because they come from different backgrounds, and the intersection again was really valuable. And in this workshop, we were working about what makes a candy to be a candy. is possible that a candy is huge, like a room. It's possible that a candy is salty. It's possible that it's bitter. It's possible that it's disgusting. It's possible that it's poisonous. It's possible that it's functional, right? And all these questions we're raising, and we're working about what makes a candy to be a candy, right? So students were exploring hands-on workshop in the lab of advanced gastronomy of that institute, and we were they were coming up with amazing ideas, as for example, making the functionality of candies and mixing them as a way to be able to eat, for example, insects, something that is quite polemic still, but may afford like the amount of nutrients that we might need for a meal maybe. And other amazing ideas as making candies out of layers that are able to make you awake. Instead of drinking a coffee, you can put a candy in your mouth, and layer by layer you will be awakening your senses. So you can start from a punch of chili and then a salty reaction, and then something, you know, a bubbling, and at the end you are awake in a sweet way. And two other persons that have been a reference for my work, and I got the pleasure to work with, Miralda and Monse, founders of Food Cultura Foundation, together with Random Happiness, with Gaston. We have been leading these actions with Antoni Miralda, the artist, well-known artist, and Monse, the chef, also artist from Barcelona. And these actions happened in their space. They have an amazing, huge space full of more than 20,000 objects from all around the world that connects with cultures, different cultures. So you can find from a magic stick to make a sacred actions from Papua New Guinea to, I don't know, a Mexican ritual for El Día de los Muertos, or yeah, all these kind of amazing objects and artifacts that have a story, very valuable story. So we're playing with these objects and we're giving them a second life. During the lockdown, we started these actions where we connect 20 people, selected people that we invite to these events, and they got to become an object. So you go out of your first human body, you know, and you get immersed in an experience where you get to empathize not just with other humans, but with other cultures and with other objects through being in a first person experience. And what is nice from these actions is that they are, every time that we do them, they are different because people is different. And every time that we do them, they are surprising, right? And it's like an experiment. It has this sense of trial, error, and yeah, see what works, what doesn't work. We always try to push ourselves to get new things. They get to connect with these objects in real life somehow in a moment, and then yeah, it's amazing to see. Now it's we are already done 4th editions, and we're preparing the 5th edition that is gonna happen soon. So hopefully this keeps on going. And finally, I wanted to talk about Agar, Gaston, and Olga, the people that made this project real. Actually, we got to meet Agar when in Israel, and something that we were discussing with Gaston, we were creating also the creative direction, is that the identity of a community can be expressed through something as bread, that is the basic food, something that allows us to connect with our traditions, with the way we eat it, not just what we eat, but how we do that. And it was an exploration of all the different communities that are in this small space through a set of photographies that we generated with Olga de la Iglesia, that is a Spanish photographer, and different models from different places, ethnicities, traditions, and how bread can drive all of these discussions and open questions around identity and cultures. And that, in a nutshell, these are some examples of what we do. But we also want to talk about a very special person for Jashan and myself, that it's Maud.
So Maud is the founder of Salty Studio in London. And last year, during the first lockdown, she started hosting a series of online talks called Edible Words. Um, all of us were sort of dabbing with the idea of doing work online, but I think Maud was the first one to jump on it and sort of get everyone to join in. And it's actually through one of the Edible Words talks that Nicole and I started attending multiple of them and came across each other, after which we sort of connected, and thank you, Maud, and Food Design Nation was formed.
So we were conceiving in this moment of lockdown where you're stuck in your house and you cannot go out, and you see how ruined is the world, and you start seeing how all the impact that we have been doing but not visualizing during a long time. So we were thinking a lot, and it was a privileged moment for us to consider what's the future of humanity, right? And what can we do for that? And we felt like isolated capsules in different parts of the world, and we were envisioning like a change, but a change that happens to be real only if it's collective. So we were envisioning the Food Design Nation, and these were the first steps. Something we're excited to present to you. So basically,
Food Design Nation.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. There was a bit of a lag. Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah. So Food Design Nation, it's collaborative platform. We're willing to have physical impact from the digital world, and one of the main things that we do is connect food creatives from a broad spectrum to design together these futures of food to come. These are our three main values: the collaborative, global, and shaping futures. As we were saying before, we were only envisioning change if we go all together for the same purpose, for making a good impact in social, environmental, and economical way. So we're thinking about all of these ecologies that are happening in different parts of the world and how to connecting them. And this leads us to think that it was by a digital territory. So we are a nation without physical territory. And we're working globally. So it's very interesting how, and something that is happening in the woods of Brazil can inspire someone in Laos, to make an initiative like this, and how knowledge is something that is very affordable to be shipped from one place to the other through the net. So we decided to make this platform to be able to meet bigger challenges, to be able to connect with things that we cannot do alone, but we can do if we're together.
So far, we've officially launched the Nation on January 7th this year. Of course, we had a lot of back-end work and months of work before that. But we've been able to grow so far to 180 different citizens from over around 40 countries, specializing in 38 different areas of expertise. So our community sort of works from, and I'm sure as food designers, everyone has different sort of specializations or backgrounds, but we have people working as chefs or in food production and catering, all the way to innovation and research, to the science side of it with nutrition, also the creative side of it with photography, illustrations and graphic design, multi-sensory eating experience designs, but also architects, space designers, and people working with food policy, anthropology, as well as sustainability and systems design. So it's quite diverse. And it's been super positive because we've got great response so far for the need for a place for global food creatives or food designers to sort of come and connect with each other. And one of our favorite comments that we received was by a food designer based in Italy. And she spoke about the role of an artist as an energy activator to really start creating collective change through collective events. And that is something that we believe in by bringing different creative people with various visions all together through Food Design Nation. We really believe we'd be able to start, something very big and exciting.
And then a bit of inspiration. This is a poem prayer from Audrey Tang, the Digital Minister of Taiwan, that says that when we see Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of Beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. And when we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. When we hear the singularity is near, let us remember the plurality is here. And actually, every time that we read that, it makes more sense with what we're growing, and because it's about people and sharing and being human in a plural way. So, are you ready to see what's going on, what has been going on since we launched?
All right, so this is how we have been trying to enable collaboration for innovation through Food Design Nation. So we really thought of the collective as something that is stronger than the individual. So none of us would be able to do this by ourselves, and we sort of need the support of the global community, and with everyone's collective intentions, I think we'd be able to take this much further. And the beauty of having such an international and diverse community is it is a great space for cultural exchange. Through cultural exchange, we're able to sort of build empathy and therefore design for solidarity. So it's like an open door. And finally, this transdisciplinary exchange is great because, as Nicole mentioned, we're able to transfer knowledge, collectively learn, but ultimately it's that exchange which leads to innovative solutions and ultimate growth for practices, for individuals, or for people. So this is what we're currently doing. At our launch event, we looked at the United Nations Food System Summit as our starting point. And based on that, we released a creative open call for our digital magazine called the FDZ. So the way we used it was we started asking people questions on these digital events, in which we had people from about 18 different countries at our launch event in January. And we started asking them sort of what it is that they thought, or their opinions on what they would like to work on, for which we spoke to them about the 5 action tracks that were released by the UN. And these 5 action tracks are based on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has outlined. So we released a poll and we asked everyone who attended the launch event, which one of these action tracks do they think is the most urgent or they would like to work creatively on? And people voted for ensuring access to safe and nutritious food for all, which is action track 1. So based on that, we devised an open call, which was a call for submissions for people to submit their creative solutions based on the theme for the FDZ, which is our upcoming digital publication. The first issue talks about democratizing food. We also are running currently a series of online events. So I'll run you through all of them: the FDN Safari, the Roundtable, as well as my personal favorite, Serendipity. We plan to release FDN challenges, which through our partners that we will release to the community, and then hopefully people can work together. And ultimately, all of those insights come together in the FDZ. So the first type of event that we run is called FDN Safari, which is a series of online talks that is led by Mod. So Mod from Salty Studio facilitates these. It's great because through the FDN Safari, what we're able to do is invite people who don't necessarily identify as food designers. So we broaden that way the spectrum of what is food design. And we're able to sort of take away key insights or learnings, which is why we call it the FDN Safari, through experts and their opinions working on their individual practices. So we had someone on one of the talks who is from Freight Farms, which is a US-based shipment container, which contains a very accessible way of transporting and delivering nutritious food fresh to different communities. So that was one way we looked at how real companies are able to start tackling these issues that seemed broad when we released the open call. Another series that we run is called the FDN Roundtable. This is in association with Eatable Editions. And it's sort of, we go from online talks, which are larger sort of audiences and a panel of speakers, to this, which is more intimate. And we call it the roundtable because the best sort of conversations happen with food around a table. So these are a series of virtual dinner parties where people are able to, based on the theme, bring in their food, share their culture, and talk about a particular topic. One of our favorite insights from the recent roundtable was someone mentioned that the transformation of our global food systems is so rapid that my grandma doesn't know what a mango is. And it was something that's been stuck in our mind ever since.
And finally, the serendipity that actually it was born for the 14th of February event of Valentine's, and we decided to keep on doing that because it was quite exciting. And what we were doing here, that we tried in the first lunch event, is to put people together in a room, sharing a cup of wine or tea or juice or whatever, and having a conversation with a random food designer from a broad spectrum. So maybe you can meet a scientist studying neurology and senses, and then you can get to know people from culinary arts, and then you can get to know people that plays with food with kids, and then it's very random. So every event that you go, you never know what's going to happen. And actually we're playing with the timings and the way of doing that, and how can we experience this shared cup of something and a good talk in a very fast speed dating way. So in a nutshell, to summarize, because we have been long enough, I think some things that we've learned doing this experiment and this exciting project is how we can reach things when we are with a community that we wouldn't do alone. And this is important to be supported with others. So we learned that 1 + 1 is not 2. And this is what we are trying to remember every time that we do an event of Food Design Nation.
And we really want to sort of create a space for like-minded individuals where we're not, as food designers, relying on the Instagram algorithm to suggest another food design studio, and then you see it and you're like, oh my God, yes, there's someone else who'll understand what we do and I can exchange ideas and maybe work together. But that's why Food Design Nation is here. It's for you to sort of have a safe space to share your voice, your opinions, your creative practices, learn and share with the other creative people who are in the same boat with you, and ultimately to share your voice and opinion so you can sing your own song. And that is, yep, go ahead, Nicole.
Finally, yeah, this is the link to the Slack chat to be connected if you want to join. We can also share you the link if you want to have it for future editions. But you're all welcome. There we share thoughts, articles, news, things that are going on, questions, collaborations. There's different channels that you can discover there. You're all invited. And now, how can we make cool things happen together? This is the question of the moment.
And we're also open for questions from anyone in the audience as well.
I think you should leave that question on because it's so interesting. I don't know if you have. Yeah, there you go. I have to make a print screen. Wait, because this is so. That's very good. How can we make cool things happen together? Yes, I already took a picture. That will be my motto. All right. So yeah. So that's the idea, and your conclusion actually, which is an open door, right? Is what actually we're trying to do as well. So it's I was having a deja vu moment, but in a good way, right? It's a deja vu without being a deja vu because it's completely different. But the idea is there, so I'm really happy about that. Very exciting. Okay, so how about our guests, students? I don't know if we have Facebook questions. Let me check. But oh, sorry. I'm just going to check here. But
I was trying to get in the QR codes, and it says that the link is not available. I don't know if
I didn't check that.
I can try again. But
our presentation, we can send you the link.
All right.
It'll be on our
Okay.
Instagram, on the Instagram link in bio as well.
Okay.
Ah,
Thank
okay, okay.
Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you, Sophia. Yeah, I didn't check it. I took a picture, but immediately I wanted to take one of these, the question. So so I know your projects are our students' projects are still under well, they're being developed still, and there are many questions, I'm sure. But would you like to share some ideas? Would you like to ask our very cheerful. I loved your presentation, guests, Nicole and Jashan, because there were so many examples and all this. For me, it was like this awakening, like, please do awake, because it feels like people are tired of the situation. They were very excited at the beginning because it was the unknown, but actually it's like, oh, am I going to go home? Lockdown, what is that? That's a word nobody talked about, actually, at least in these countries, right? Where, like in Europe, I'm sure Nicole in Barcelona didn't talk about it. And suddenly it was kind of excitement thing, like, oh, how are we going to do it? And I do have more time now, I'm home. This is what I'm complaining. And suddenly everybody is home for longer than they expected and hoped. So it's very interesting what you did about this awakening ideas, but related to everything, this new narratives, this intersection of areas, that is something that is not easy to achieve, because we're so focused on our own areas, right? And suddenly it's not very comfortable to go and have someone else talk about something. You may have some ideas, but are completely different sometimes, or you have no idea. So I don't know. What my question would be, how do you manage all this knowledge going around and all these skills and all this? They're so different. They're really different. And this masters, actually, this is the example, the closest example I have is we are 3 people coordinating the masters, but the idea is that we are from completely different areas, actually. Ricardo is from one area, Nelson is from another area, I'm from another area, completely different. So it's very interesting to see how we sometimes it all makes sense, but it takes some work for it to make sense. So I don't know, how would you, how do you deal with that?
We don't sleep a lot, actually.
Neither do we.
No,
Very
we
good.
don't sleep a lot. Yeah, it's hard when you want to make bigger things. I think that something we've learned is that it's important to narrow things down to one thing at a time. And for example, we count with a team that it's making this possible. Like Maud is leading the safaris, Nerja is going through the roundtables, and this is something that we're pleased to have these people that we trust, so we can go further,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, both teams are so small that we cannot afford to be full-time, even we would love to.
And also, I think to add to your question, I think that's what drives us. That's why we like food design. That sort of diversity, it's a lot of information to process. So I think sometimes people perceive food designers not as experts on something, but I think it's our strength because we're agile and able to move from one area to another. That's why I think a lot of food designers also thrived through last year, because they were able to focus on their creative practice, put themselves into their work. And then it was not studios that had to shut down. It was something that they were able to sort of move on what currently was the need, what was driving them, in order to stay afloat, to survive, and to sort of keep growing, which was, I think, an advantage as well.
It's very interesting that you focus on the need, and sometimes our current need is not actually it may drive us now, but it won't drive us in a year or 2 years ago in 2019. And so it keeps you moving in a completely different way. It's true. It's a sign. It's a very interesting perspective. I don't know if someone else has a question. I hope so.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Okay. Jashan, could I please ask you to stop sharing so I could see, because I don't know why I can. Oh, thank you. Okay, so all right, so come on, don't be shy. I know they're all overwhelmed about lots of information. Also, this is the end of the semester, so actually everybody is knocked down, not locked down, but knocked down. So it's not easy. We're all very tired, really tired. But I don't know if you have any questions or anything you want to share, or your thoughts on this, like the idea of the that wall, that kind of like food waste interactive wall, that is quite interesting. I was how did people react? I mean, did they get there? Did they touch it, or were they, I mean, would someone else from your crew go there, touch it, so everybody would touch it? Or did people really feel attracted to that? Because that's something very interesting. It's to make people comfortable to talk or to act or to, do things, because sometimes people are not so comfortable doing that, especially if they are being filmed or in a TV show or I don't know. How was it?
So I think we gauged the success of it. First pitching it to the chef was step one. So for her to commission the project was step one. That was not the success of the project. I think the success of the project was the fact that it became a conversation starter. And we regularly visited the studio as well after to check on the wall, etc. It didn't last. It's not lasted 3 years. It lasted about 9 or 12 months, which was okay because I think it did its job with becoming the iconic attraction for the place while forming its identity. But we always saw people sort of going and touching it. They were fascinated because it was a material that they were familiar with, but they were not familiar with it in that format or used in that way. So they would touch it, they would smell it. Sometimes they would lick it, even though we said, please don't, because we treated it with non-edible material. So.
Well, and that's very interesting, because we had a guest some years ago, and he was an Italian chef, and he was talking about pasta. And pasta is so familiar to us, and he asked us, why is pasta so successful? Like, I mean, why does everybody really enjoy pasta? And he says, because, well, he explained through the touch and also like how you can play in your mouth with pasta. So that idea of going and licking the pasta, because and all the shapes that you can create actually gives you a different feeling when you're eating the pasta. So it's really interesting. Pasta is a phenomenon by itself. So I thought that would be very interesting. Now, can you tell me about your project, like the one with the edible architecture project? Because I'm very curious to know about it.
I will. I'm gonna. It needs a little photograph to show you along with it, so I'm gonna do that as well. Just pulling that up.
All right.
So during architecture school, like everyone has to, at the end of, I think, design school, you come up with a thesis project. Mm-hmm. So my thesis project, of course, it was a dilemma between becoming a chef or an architect. And I didn't know food design was an option at the time. So this is a spot in Mumbai, and Mumbai is a very dense urban city. Mm-hmm. And to find this sort of site, this is actually the Mumbai Zoo. And a lot of the plants here, because this used to be the botanical gardens during the British era, and a lot of the plants and trees here are still, they're fruit-bearing trees because there were orchards. So there were sort of jamuns, which is a sort of berry, and there are coconut trees, and there are sort of different fruit-bearing trees here. And what got my attention was that building, which is the Mumbai City Museum. And when I looked at this building as an architect, I immediately thought, oh my God, pistachio and almond. And when we went inside and saw this sort of ornate, intricate, detailing in the interior design. And by the way, this is very well kept. Europe does a great job at preserving its heritage. In India, we need to do a better job of it. So this is one of the examples of a good upkeep. when I looked at the inside, I was like cherry filling because I saw these colors and sizes. And that's exactly what I did. So the final thesis project was completely made out of different sort of pastry, cake, and confectionery, where each building or proposal piece was designed based on what the architecture would be. That was the flavor of the building. So for example, this jelly that you're seeing here was functionally a conservatory, which was growing herbs and fresh sort of leaves. And so that kind of natural light, the freshness of the herbs, etc., was what I translated into as a basil and mint jelly with edible glitter, because that just made architectural qualities sort of come to life. And we even took it sort of one step further. It was my first opportunity to collaborate with chefs and pastry chefs as well. So it was a dream. The entire site was laid out on a base of pastry, but I studied the soil profile because as an architect, you study to what depth of the ground you can go for your foundation. So what density of soil exists. And we translated that into the cake as well. So you had a base of a charcoal biscuit, and then you had a dense brownie, then you had a cake, then you had a ganache, then you had a buttercream. So that really led to, even when you cut into it, it sort of made architectural sense. And then finally, this was the final project, which was gastronomy and architecture as multi-sensory experiences. And I had to do a course, luckily at the time, with Dinara Casco at the Kiev Institute of Culinary. And Dinara is an architect who 3D prints molds for stunning looking desserts. So I was able to do a course with her, which was made for me, architecture and desserts.
Perfect.
And the thesis project sort of goes from understanding gastronomy and architecture as artistic disciplines that come from basic needs of nutrition and shelter. So when I was doing the project in architecture school, my guides and tutors were like, what are you doing? You're not doing architecture. You're not gonna pass this. But it was something I really believed in, and I had the support of my head professor. So I just went with it. And it was really fun because it was not only the time to work with architecture materials, super hands-on, but also explore using edible materials and the opportunity with that, which no one else was doing. And also I started hosting, well, now I call them eating experiences, but the first versions of that through blindfolded tastings, as well as sound and food pairings and different sort of research. Yeah.
That was actually explained a lot, like, because of how did it evolve, actually, like all those subjects coming together, and sometimes not being able to be, well, not knowing exactly where to go, but questioning something that the academy, it's hard for them to see as well. So that, did it happen to you as well, Nicole? I'm very curious.
Yes, I think so. So it's hard. Yeah, it was a long time ago, but yes, it's abstract sometimes.
Because it's that idea of innovation and the mango that you were talking about, right? It's like she doesn't know what a mango is, right? So it's very, very interesting. I can't remember very well, but there was a drawing from, I think, the 18th century, but I'm not so sure. I have to check. Which is, I even had a poster because it was where there is like a grandmother and a grandchild, and the grandmother is, well, the grandchild is trying to explain to the grandmother how to boil an egg. And she's going to all these things like, the temperature has to be like this, you have to use this. And it's all technology, all science, right? I mean, science in that sense. And the grandmother is like, the things I'm missing, I just used to boil some water and put the egg inside, and what's happening. So it's very, very interesting because it's something so simple, but it could be so complex at the same time. It depends on the perspective you're looking at. So this is, actually all these perceptions. The word that came to my mind when you were talking, Jashan, was like all the perceptions that you can have, like all the flavors that comes to your mind when you perceive something. So it's really interesting. And how can you share that? Like, who are the guests? Did you have really an experience, or because that really matters? Who are you going to invite to your experiences, and are they going to grasp or not? Sometimes it's not. So so it's very, very interesting. I don't know, do you have any further questions, Mariana?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I know, I was looking at you, it's like, I'm sure Mariana wants to ask something. Yes. All right.
As I suspected, I would have a question, I think, for Jashan, because usually I'm very lonely in these food talks because I'm the only architect present, I think. And,
not alone anymore.
I know. No, and the students unfortunately have to take some architectural stuff sometimes, but I completely relate to, you know, this idea that when we study architecture and somehow we find ourselves closer to food, and then trying to make both work together, and people around us not really understanding what the hell is going on. And I wanted to ask you, because I studied with a lot of colleagues, and I think it's very interesting, these interconnections between architecture and food. I see a lot of architects turning into chefs, but I also think architecture can be very much an approach, a way of thinking, a design process, in the lack of a better term. And I just wanted to ask, out of curiosity, what do you think that your architecture background brings to your projects with food? I think, of course, one part that probably is very relevant is this combination or ability to combine different areas of knowledge. But I'm just curious from my selfish point of view here.
I mean, very valid question, and you're totally right when you say that. I think it's a way of thinking, and to be very honest, the architecture education is something that's grueling and something that's 5 years long, and you have so many sort of moments where you're like, I don't want to do it, I just want to give up. And it's something that I experienced multiple times, my colleagues experience. But you're completely right when you say it's about learning. So I can't unlearn or take away the architect mind from the way I approach food projects as well. And that being said, I'm going to just show you one example of what I mean. Are you able to see the screen?
Yeah.
So this is a workshop that we run, which is storytelling through choux pastry. Now, choux pastry, when you cut into it, has these little pockets. And when I, as an architect, look at that, I'm like, perfect for storytelling. It's a section of a building. Let's start, forming creativity. I know. And that's what we did. I ran a month-long workshop at the architecture school. And right here is, the students did phenomenal work. This is Ellen DeGeneres' studio made out of choux pastry. And then they did creative writing around it, different sort of things around it. But the core of it is, I think, by considering food inside the body and space around the body, which is the architecture, you're able to create sort of unforgettable multi-sensory experiences that, you can't take away. So I think they're very closely related.
That really shows, it sheds some light on what we were talking about.
Yeah, I think I think not last year. No, I'm all confused with COVID. It seems like a year kind of disappeared in my timeline.
I know.
But 2 years ago, I interviewed Carolyn Still, and she was also talking about this architectural mind. And especially, we're having some music. And of this ability also of interconnecting scales, and, the ability of interconnecting spaces that we can touch with our bodies, but also to think about the big picture of the planet and food systems and so on. And I think that's also interesting. I teach food systems, I think maybe because of that ability, I think. So I really enjoyed your presentation, and I think your projects are very rich, and I like to see all, like I said, all these backgrounds, areas of knowledge, researches come together, because I think that's something food does very well, but it's also something I really appreciate in architecture, whatever shape it takes in the end. But so thank you.
I mean, if you have any questions or you want to connect offline later, you can also just reach
I
out.
will definitely process what I heard and maybe get back to you.
There you go. You have new connections now.
Yay!
Connection.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It was my bad. It was my music, but not my music. I wanted to go to Facebook to check if there were some questions, and then that pops up. But I have no idea what it was, so I didn't manage to go. But I hope there were no questions. I don't know if we can check, but I was trying to check here, but I don't think there were. I wasn't in time. But all right. Well, if there are any questions, actually, we can then share them with you, and I'm sure you will be glad to answer them as well. So thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you so much, Jashan, for being here. Thank you for all of you for attending. It did shed some light into some of the things that actually we have been discussing here. So thank you so much, and all the best for your projects.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
we have upcoming roundtables and an upcoming serendipity event. So if any of you want to join it, it'll be a nice way to connect with the global food and design community.
Thank you. And we're going to share them as well on our networks and everything.
That would be great.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. And take care.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, take care. You
Thank
too.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.